everyone, and welcome to Star Trek Wars, your official bootleg Strange New Worlds podcast. My name is Jeremy. Joining me tonight, defecting from Engage, the defunct official Star Trek cast, the butcher of podcasting himself, it's Jordan. Hey, Jordan.
Oh, okay. Now we're going to have to spar.
And to my left, still having PTSD from the days we had to watch 5 straight episodes of Trek to do the podcast. She wasn't even on the podcast at the time, but she still hates it. My co-host and co-life partner, Chelsea. Hey, Chelsea.
Hey, guys.
The episode we're reviewing tonight will be rated on a scale from 1 to 10 by us, the co-hosts. And you guys in the Star Trek Wars Council left a rating on our Facebook page. If you wish to join the council and have your vote counted for next week's episode, head over to that page. You can find us by searching for Star Trek Wars. The council should pop up right at the top. There you can rate episodes yourself and can also leave a comment that will be potentially read on air. It's a great community. We're all on there, very active, and love talking Trek with you. Now, before we get started, unfortunately, we do have some corrections. So,
I didn't do it.
No, we're pretty much okay, Jordan. Well, we couldn't figure out who Pelia was talking about last week when she was talking about this man gave her the, that advice of like fake it till you make it.
Right.
Was that any specific person? It wasn't really a Star Trek reference, but the interwebs have decided that she probably is talking about a famous actor.
Is it Bill Murray from Scrooged?
That would have been great if it turns out Pelia was actually an actor in the 80s. Oh,
it'd be great if Bill Murray had some good headlines from behind the scenes.
He sure could use some right about now. But it seems like she was talking about Cary Grant.
Oh.
And this is the line, the quote from Cary Grant. Everybody wants to be Cary Grant. Even I want to be Cary Grant. I have spent the greater part of my life fluctuating between Archie Leach and Cary Grant, unsure of either, suspecting each. I pretended to be somebody I wanted to be until finally I became that person, or he became me. That's pretty specific as to what she said, so maybe that was what she was talking about.
Who is that?
He's an old actor.
Cary Grant?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, old actor. I've actually, surprisingly enough, being an old actor, I've heard really good things about him as a person. So,
Miracle on 34th Street, is that him? Or It's a Wonderful Life?
It's a Wonderful Life is a God bless you, movie house. Wah.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the other guy. So it must be Miracle on 34th Street.
Is that the one
Maybe
where
so.
every time a bell rings, an angel gets their wings?
Yeah.
It's a weird movie. It's a depressing movie. Oh, he's in Father Goose. Actually, I just watched that.
Father Goose?
Have you ever seen that movie?
I don't think she has based on that.
I guess from that response, I could intuit that you haven't. But as a kid, we watched Father Goose a lot for some reason. But basically, it's a guy who it's a long story. I'll just skip it for now. Watch a trailer.
I'm okay.
That sounds good. You sold us.
You know what? Watch the whole movie.
Well, thanks everybody for sending that in anonymously. If you want to find a correction from today's episode, if you happen to, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know by writing us on Facebook, or you can email us at StarTrekWarsPod@gmail.com. If you'd like to leave a voice message instead, you can call us at speakpipe.com/Star Trek Wars, and we may play your message on next week's episode. Now, as Haggith always likes to say...
So let's get down to the business.
Yes, let's get down to the business. Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Season 2, Episode 8, Under the Cloak of War. Written by Davey Perez, directed by Jeffrey Bird. Captain Pike and his crew welcome a Klingon defector aboard the Enterprise, but his presence triggers a revelation of some shocking secrets. All right, well... let's get into this episode with our hit it or quit it. Initial reactions, whether we like the episode, we'll
Hit it.
And if we didn't like the episode, we'll quit it.
I quit. To hell with you.
Jordan, let's start with you. Would you hit or quit this week's episode?
I'm going to hit it. I'm going to hit it like Mbenga hit Ra.
There's so many hits you could have used this week. So
Yeah.
Very good. Chelsea, what about you?
I will also hit it.
What would you hit it like?
I don't know.
Sorry to put you on the
So
spot.
anxious.
This is a fun episode.
I'm having
Chelsea,
so
liven
much
up.
fun. I'm not crying.
We're going to get into some hilarious things and hijinks later. Yeah, I'd hit it also. I'd hit it like Mbenga hitting the purge transporter buffer button.
Dang.
Oh, jeez.
We're having
this?
fun.
Poor Alvarado.
I love that it looked like the Staples easy button. It's like,
Just a big red. Death purge. All right, let's start with our pros. Jordan, why don't you lead us off this week? What are your pros for Under the Cloak of War?
well, just the Starfleet crew facing their prejudice towards Klingons. And we see a little bit of that in the original series. You're supposed to be a lot more kind of enlightened when you're in Starfleet, but we did see a few crew members who had some issues, say, with the Romulans or the Klingons in the past. But I don't think it's realistic to assume prejudice will just go away in the future, especially after fighting a war with someone for several years and experiencing what we see in this episode. So I can kind of understand that. Like actual flashbacks, like I don't know how many times I've hoped to see flashbacks of these characters' pasts and kind of what they've experienced, where they're coming from before they were on the Enterprise, especially with Mbenga. That was really cool to see. And we kind of find out where Mbenga learned his transporter trick that he uses with his daughter later on. Mm-hmm. And we see kind of the beginning of Chapel and Mbenga's working relationship and just a little kind of Chapel backstory as well. There's some Star Trek 6 vibes here with the whole guess who's coming to dinner type thing. Like it's not played for laughs quite as much as in Star Trek 6, but it was awkward for sure. And I'll be talking about that dinner probably a little bit more later on. But speaking of dinner, jambalaya. I love jambalaya. And I can actually make a pretty sick box of Zataran's jambalaya.
Wow.
Just need a pound of sausage. Boom. And I don't know. I want to do like a taste test between Cisco's jambalaya and Pike's jambalaya and see which one comes out on top.
It's got to be Cisco.
I would think so. It definitely probably spicier.
Yes.
The other side of Starfleet, kind of seeing the war side of things that we don't really touch on as much other than, Deep Space Nine, definitely. But I think this is, they're able to show a little bit more, seeing as it's a streaming service, as far as that guy's like guts being inside out and like some of the wounds and, and like the siege, what is it, AR-558 or whatever it is. Now he gets his leg blown off and you just hear him scream. So this is a little different, a little intense. I mean, both episodes are great, but not a whole lot of war episodes like this. We see or hear Mbenga's name, I guess his called name or his Section 31 name or whatever they call him, the Ghost. I don't know if that's just a nickname, but it sounds like he definitely has a past. I think we could see another, hopefully next season, backstory episode of him going on some secret missions.
There's a lot of things going on in this episode that we may or may not agree with, and with war and everything, but I hope we can all agree that the Ghost is a badass nickname. It
is. And I wouldn't mind seeing some Mbenga missions, some flashbacks. And really, like the plot twist of this episode, which the way the episode plays out, it kind of hides some details for this reveal, but it's still a good reveal of Mbenga basically being the butcher of Chagall. Mm-hmm. And it's not Ra. So, well, not in so many ways, but that was an interesting plot twist. And the episode definitely did not go the way that I thought. Usually with Star Trek, you get these episodes and you kind of know how they're going to end. And this played out definitely different than what I was thinking. We also get an Andorian with one Anar eye. I've never seen that before.
Ew, what?
The Andorian who had like the scar and he had like the white eye like the Anar have. I thought number one was also very good this week.
I thought he was just
Was she?
blind, and you're calling it an anar eye.
Well, the Anar are blind.
Yeah.
So they have two eyes
Oh,
that look
I
like
just
that, but
assumed
he had
it
one.
was like the scar.
It was, but it
It
kind
was.
of ain't his eye,
I don't
Yeah.
like
basically.
that word.
I thought
I don't
number
like
one.
anar eye either, because that sounds off, guys.
Jordan definitely didn't mention
He
it.
didn't have a
Freak
pink
you
eye,
out.
so that's good. I thought number one was really good this week. For the last couple of weeks, I know we've kind of gotten on her scenes and her not being, as good of a first officer as maybe she can be, but she definitely was reading the room a lot better than Pike this week and understanding what was going on and giving good advice. So I enjoyed her this week. Neutral Zone wise, I know a lot of people were really happy about this, but Clint Howard's in this episode. Like, it's just kind of Neutral Zone because he just says a couple weird things and then you don't see him again. So, I mean, he's been in a lot of Star Trek. He was in Star Trek when he was like 5 years old as a baby drinking Tranya. So I guess it's good to see him again, but his character didn't do a whole lot for me.
Tranya.
M'Benga is still really hard to understand at times. Like, there's something in his performance that I almost have to watch it with subtitles or turn it way up just to understand exactly what he's saying. And there's several characters like that. Pelia would be another one for different reasons. Chapel lying for M'Benga, I did not love, but I kind of understand why she does it. And this episode does a good job of showing us why she would. And then the old school microwave timer, like they used that last week when they're trying to synthesize that material, and they use it again here when like the tea's done or the rectagino. It's like ding. It's weird. I could see that in the original series because that timer's like from the 60s, but it's just a little weird. And I thought for sure that M'Benga was going to poison the ambassador by over garnishing his food with that herb, because there's like this exchange between him and Pike where he's like, that's deadly if you use too much. He's like, but it tastes delicious. So I thought that could have been a way this would go. Definitely have a few issues with this week's episode. I did really like it. I think overall really strong. I like the backstory. I like kind of seeing, I don't know if like is the right word, but it's interesting seeing kind of like the terrors of war and what M'Benga and Chapel went through. And I could not imagine one being a doctor, but being a doctor in that atmosphere of war where people just constantly, like we see here, being teleported onto this huge pad and you've got people with their guts on the outside, and just like how traumatic that would be going through that day in and day out. So I think it did a good job of showing that, showing M'Benga's trauma and Chapel, and to a lesser extent Ortegas and kind of what they went through during the war. But those are my thoughts.
Very good. Yeah, this is going to be a tough one to score for sure. Chelsea, what about you? You got some pros?
Yeah, I have a few. I also liked Una this week.
Good.
Kind of telling Pike, like, hey, it's not that simple, especially because she's not been my favorite person previously in the last couple of episodes. I feel like this is a hard episode to kind of mark as either good or bad. I really liked it. I kind of like M'Benga's like villain origin story, for lack of better words. I think that it's hard, like, because this isn't like future, like far future Star Trek. So like, I think it's interesting that we're still dealing with like kind of the human need to like lie and be kind of icky, and seeing them explore that I think was really good. I do think that Chapel was really great in this. I didn't know that her and M'Benga served together like during the Klingon War, so that was kind of cool for me.
It'll make rewatching the premiere interesting too, because I think things like that were brought up in the Broken Circle, but I think that's going to have more meaning now watching it again with this episode in mind.
Yeah. I liked Ortega's. I guess I'd be more a neutral zone. Her talking on the bridge. I don't quite understand why Una wouldn't announce Captain on the bridge the second they walked in, especially with a visitor. That was kind of weird neutral zone to me.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it drives the storyline, but
It could have been worse. Ortega's could have done it like, they're right behind me, aren't they? Oh, boy. Like, at least they didn't go that far with it.
yeah. I don't know. This is a hard episode for me to kind of like I said, rank and divvy out into good and bad. I overall really liked it. I know that people probably have issue with Mbenga being the butcher when he is a doctor, but that was also kind of the whole point of the episode, right? Is forgiveness.
They both use knives.
Yeah, like, wow, okay, yes. Good call out, Jordan. Great job. They hated, was it Ra? Roth? I don't know. Yeah.
Ra.
They hated him because he like did all these horrible things, and why does he deserve forgiveness? But then Mbenga's basically the same person. So I don't know. It's weird, and I don't really know how to talk to it in pros versus cons. I don't think that was helpful or insightful, but that's what I have.
Well, that's what this episode is. Like, this is one of those episodes, and I'm going to say like two Vicks and not in like a joking way, where people I think are going to fall on two different sides of what happens in the last 10 minutes of this episode. And unlike Tuvix, I don't think either one is wrong. I think whatever you feel is correct. And I think this is very, polarizing episode.
I do think it is a weird pro for me that Pike knows his crew well enough to try to force them into an uncomfortable situation, and then he's at least able to read the room, right? And kind of excuses, like forcefully almost dismisses them from dinner under the guise of, hey, make sure Ortegas is okay. Because he sees things are about to pop off. I also would mark it as a pro that he had the foresight to start looking at Mbenga's service record. Because I don't think he's not stupid. There's no way that he bought the story that Ra attacked Mbenga. Yeah. He knows what's happening, and I'm excited to kind of see how that might change their dynamic and how that's handled in the future.
Yeah, that goes into the interesting way this episode ended, because I got that feeling too that Pike went back to Mbenga because he did not believe. Like, everything wrapped up in a nice little package, but it just didn't make sense.
Yeah, and it shows him looking at his file. So just, I don't know, some fun foreshadowing, especially coming off the previous episode where there was no like villain, and then they throw this at us, and it's just like an ethical, like, well, I get all sides of the story, but like also ew, but also yes. I don't know.
Like, and I think that's really smartly written, because they even have like the murder weapon, like this was like Duck Tang or whatever the Klingon knife is that has the blood of the generals that were murdered. Well, the Klingon ambassador claimed that he murdered them, and he had this, and he was killed with this weapon. So clearly he had this weapon out. So it makes sense that what they're saying is true, because it's not like Mbenga would have had this weapon. He's not the butcher.
Why no fingerprints though?
Well, Mbenga could be like, he lurched forward, he grabbed the weapon from him and attacked him. I think I don't think anybody's thinking that Mbenga was the butcher all along. So but I do think you're right. And Pike, despite all this facts saying the otherwise, Pike does not believe Chapel or Mbenga.
Yeah. Well, I'm excited to see the Dateline episode about it.
Serial podcast.
Yeah, that's when all the real evidence comes out.
Right. Oh my. Okay, yeah, pros for me. Yeah, this is a weird episode.
It is.
Especially we went from those old scientists into Under the Cloak of War. Back to back. Did Trek just give us their very own Barbieheimer?
Just wait till next week.
Yeah, jeez. Then we just swing the other direction again.
Yeah, it's a weird sandwich for sure.
Weird sandwich to be sure, but a welcome one. Also, I got a very familiar feeling from the Next Generation ep where Worf refused to donate blood to that dying Romulan in TNG, even though everybody else was like, hey, we're a little bit more enlightened, Worf, so I know you had some beef with this guy, but like, you know, it's the 24th century, so you help him out. And Worf's like, nope, not unless you order me to.
Biff.
And like Mbenga says to Pike, it's easy to be enlightened and see the good in all people when you're not the one who has endured the suffering and damage. That's some strong stuff. Like Pike has, you know, the luxury of being this enlightened because he hasn't had to get down in the muck like that. Like the Enterprise was sent away, and that wasn't Pike's decision. That was Starfleet's, but still, like, it's easy for Pike to be like, let's all just get along with this guy. He didn't live under this guy's rule and see all these women and children destroyed and killed. This is just great Star Trek stuff. Yeah, it's an intense, dark episode. It touches on topics very difficult, really, to talk about. And for me personally, I didn't see a clear cut. This is obviously the right thing to do message in here. Sure, the war is over and murder is wrong, but I don't know how hard that struggle is inside. Like Mbenga said, war changes you. Should he have killed Dakra in sickbay? If no, then why would it have been okay for him to kill him 3 years ago during the war? He deserved to die then, but not now because the war is over and your bosses say he's chill. Like, this is rough stuff. And let's not forget, Dakra was a war criminal, but he was also a coward who fled from the Klingons and then used the death of his generals that he didn't even do, but he took credit for to leverage his way into the Federation. So, yeah, is it right for him to be murdered in sickbay a couple years later? I don't know, but he's also a monster. He's a coward. He's a liar. Is he good for the Federation as an ambassador?
It'd be so hard to trust him.
Yeah, especially for people like Mbenga. Like, Mbenga knows right off the bat this guy's lying because he's not the butcher.
But even without that, there's something off about him.
Yeah. I know what it is.
He's manipulative. I don't know.
Yeah, what is it, Jordan?
He's full of something.
And what's he full
Targ
of?
manure.
Oh my!
Boothby can tell us.
Targ manure
here.
He is full of targ manure. That's true. And from people that have seen it personally, like, they're not buying it at all.
No.
But he does seem like he's very like anti-Klingon, which is a little like going too far the other direction. Like, yeah, we're a terrible people.
Yeah.
I even have human teeth for some reason.
Oh, I'm going to talk about that.
Oh,
later.
okay. Sorry. I guess we're still in prose. But yeah, is he good for the Federation as ambassador? He probably is because he's well-spoken. He's diplomatic. He's like the face for the very thing Starfleet stands for, a former enemy who's now a friend. It's an easy win from the outside looking in, an easy thing to sign off on from people that never had to go through the pain and suffering he caused. So do I agree with Mbenga killing him in sickbay? Maybe not, but do I understand it from his point of view? Maybe yes. This is also a person that Mbenga warned a minimum of 5 times to stay away from. Like, stay away from me. Don't touch me. Stop. Just leave. Just go. It's complicated, and I really love that. And just great performances all around. And I think it's a great, difficult episode.
Yeah, him grabbing his arm that's too much.
Yeah,
that's too much for me.
Yeah, it's the second time he does it too, because he does it at dinner.
Yeah,
So,
like I don't know, that caused me to not trust that character. So I was like, he's messing with Mbenga.
Mm-hmm.
He knows he was there. He can see it, and he's trying to like capitalize on that. And like,
yeah, he's seeing this as another like political opportunity for him, and he's missing all these warning signs where Mbenga's like, dude, do not go near me.
I don't think he's missing him. I think he's playing it like that.
Yeah.
Like, he knows that Captain Pike is like, you have to be nice to him. He's our guest. I think I don't know. It's icky.
Yep. Yeah, I got that too. And he's an icky.
Yeah,
he's an
manipulative
icky person,
and he's gross.
But he's someone that the higher ups I could definitely see as seeing as someone that they could use.
Yeah, it's like corporate America.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's like a political opportunist or just a politician.
Yep. We're having a great time, aren't we? All right. Well, after the break, we will jump into cons and hear from you guys. Star Trek Wars is a podcast that has reviewed every single episode of Star Trek's classic era. We covered the original series through Enterprise in our first 7 seasons on this feed. Season 8 is dedicated to the Trek films, and Season 9, that's where you're at right now, friend. And that's where we cover all things modern Trek. You can find every one of those right here on the Star Trek Wars feed, plus bonus content. With over 350 episodes of Trek content, it's never been a better time to hit it. On top of that, we also have a Patreon channel that covers a wide variety of content, both Trek-related and otherwise. Chelsea and I are in the midst of cooking up some new Patreon content, both Trek-related and otherwise. For just a few bucks a month, you'll get access to all that content as well. Check us out over at patreon.com/Star Trek Wars. Now, let's get into our... All right, Jordan, do you want to lead us off with your cons this week?
Sure. Yeah, I'm going to start with Pike. I do think he could have done a much better job of reading the room and sooner, and he probably shouldn't have had M'Benga, Chapel, and Ortegas at that dinner. I could see him asking maybe for one of them to volunteer to be there, given the circumstances, but just if you're going to be the captain of the ship before you have the Klingon ambassador on board, it's not like he doesn't know they were in the war. He should have been looking at their files sooner than that. Mm-hmm. He should have known what was going on and what he was putting them through. And I brought this up before, but he's extremely lenient on his crew and has been all season. Like, I don't know how many outbursts we've seen from Ortegas and just how many things have happened without any repercussions. I think that's my biggest issue with this. Is like, I have an issue with anyone really stabbing someone to death during a verbal altercation or not, but especially a Starfleet officer who is also the chief medical officer. Regardless of him being a soldier in the past, you can't have the ship's doctor murder someone with zero repercussions. So that was, I mean, it's a little different. Like you said, what's the difference between, in sickbay versus the war? I mean, when you're in a time of war like that, and this guy is, murdering women and children, I think that's a slightly different circumstance than having a conversation with him on the flagship where you're not in danger of being hurt. And, I mean, it's just basically rage here is what comes out. And that's tough to deal with. Like, I can understand, like you said, where M'Benga is coming from, seeing what we see in this episode. It does a good job of painting that picture. But also being a Star Trek show and having your doctor, it's really hard to justify his actions. You really can't. Like, could you imagine if Dr. Bones slid a knife into Chancellor Gorkon instead of trying to resuscitate him? Like, I don't know. That's a tough one to swallow for sure. So, I mean, this episode was really good. It brings up some tricky situations. I think there's probably a way to play that end scene a little different other than having M'Benga just stab the guy straight up. That's a little tough. And then also, his conversation with Pike, where Pike knows that he's not telling the truth and he just kind of lets him off because the guy was a bad dude. It's kind of, I wasn't super happy with the way they ended that, but I was shocked that M'Benga straight up just kills the guy. So, I mean, there's definitely shock value there, but that's a tough one to swallow for sure.
But a welcome one.
But no.
Oh,
but that's all the cons I can think of right now.
Awesome. Thank you, Jordan. Chelsea, do you have something to add?
Yes. Also, my top con was Pike being insensitive to the fact that they were in the Klingon War, which I have a question about that. Do they not have a ship counselor? Because this would have been like the perfect time to have them meet with the ship counselor, decide if that was something that they were emotionally and mentally prepared for or if they could handle, and then proceed accordingly. Like, I just don't ever recall.
That's about 100 years away.
Yep. Back in the 2260s, people still just took their feelings and pushed it deep down. Didn't talk to anybody about it. It wasn't until the
And that's how we
2360s that we start being okay opening up with our feelings.
Well, that's why we have chief medical officers murdering people in sickbay, but okay.
Absolutely. Yeah, there are so many people with PTSD, and especially this soon after a war, like there's so many hurt people. And they'll figure it out 100 years from now.
That's just weird because, we already have, but all right. Yeah. I feel like, once again, this was a missed opportunity for Ortegas and her story.
Yep.
Like, they hinted, oh, yeah, she served. She was in the war. We got really cool flashbacks. She was nowhere. Like, I want information on her. I want the backstory. I think she is a much deeper character than just this, like, super cool pilot who's a war hero. And she's, like, funny and sarcastic. Like, everybody else has had their moment. Yep. What the hell?
Yeah, but Chelsea, she's a war hero. We know that. They've told us like 6 times.
Yeah, but like that's literally it.
I know.
Yeah.
It's not fair. And I really like her.
That's one of my biggest cons as well.
Like, I love her as a character. I love her as an actress. Like, come on, man.
Give her something to do.
Yeah. I mean, and then I got all excited a couple episodes when she was going to do the away mission and she gets the boot. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, they just keep toying with it. Yeah. And it feels
They're teasing you with it and then pulling it away.
Yeah. It just feels like an injustice. And I think that we need more on her because she's probably pretty great.
Don't make that face, Jordan. It wasn't in a gross way.
What? I'm sorry. Jordan, did you have something to share with the class?
No, sorry. I'm just really excited because I'm about to eat a Reese's fast break. They're delicious.
Right. Jordan, this is not the episode for you to be taking out of context things from what I say. People can be teased and things pulled away from them, and that doesn't have to be gross. Eat your Reese's.
I was just teasing you with this candy bar and then pulling it away to just prove your point.
You were saying, Chelsea, about the hazards of war?
Yep. Raw? I don't really understand what's going on with that thing. I don't think it's actually a Klingon. Unless, and I have a theory, that the reason he joined the Federation and flipped on the Klingons is because they offered him free orthodontic services.
Chelsea, that's the gold you could use for next time on.
Yeah. Well, I have a next time on that also refers to his body, so this is fine.
Oh my gosh.
But what was that?
Yeah, that's definitely stuff in my cons as well.
He has better teeth than I can't say that.
Oh no.
He's got good teeth.
Okay. I wonder who you were going to go after there.
He's got good teeth. I'll leave it at that. And then this is a con that's not completely related to this episode, but they've been teasing the whole Gorn chip storyline. And are they just waiting for the last episode? Are they just going to spring some?
Pretty much going to have to be, unless the Gorn are in on the musical next week. In which case, I can't wait for my favorite. For that song is
their hit song.
Catching some Z's
in the rain.
I was thinking zzz, lightning. I would like to see some Gorn do the grease lightning on the car.
Yeah.
Little black shirts rolled up.
We might see the Gorn.
I don't know. That seems weird. And I hate it when shows do this. I hate it when they tease this is the big villain of the season. And then they just don't address it again until the end. It just seems like cheap writing. I'm sorry that you couldn't come up with something interesting to make people want to watch next season without waiting for this. Anyway, that's it.
Aren't you excited that the Gorn aren't in 4 episodes this season, though?
I don't really care. I just know that they teased it and then took it away.
Jordan? No, he's good. Okay.
So, all in or all out? I don't know. I don't like
what,
that.
Jordan?
There's no in and out, okay?
All right, thank you, Chelsea. Any other cards from you?
Play the fifth.
Just sick of the in and out with the Gorn,
Yep, aren't we all? Yeah, my cons, they're pretty close to your guys' Klingon makeup. I've said it before. I'll say it again with even more confidence this time. I prefer the look of Discovery Klingons to the strange new worlds, Klingons. Maybe not the dialogue and their voices and how they speak Klingon, but in terms of just physical aesthetics, I prefer Discovery Klingons. And I wish that CBS didn't just collapse to the people complaining about their looks, because I think like they dialed them back in season 2, and I think they look good with hair. Maybe be less purple, but like the actual like alienness of the Klingons, I really like in Discovery. Takuvma was a bit much. Takuvma.
Is that the albino?
No,
Oh.
The albino I'm all right with, and Cole specifically by Kenneth Mitchell, who played Cole, like the main villain for the first half of season 1. I think he looks incredible, and I miss it. These just look too like they're just too soft and foamy.
Ew. Oh, they're really good at moisturizing.
And Ortega's is my other big con. Last year, the producers promised those who wanted more Ortega's was in for a pleasant surprise this season, alluding to us finally getting a Erica-centered episode. Then last year, they showed that big clip of her getting ready in the Among the Lotus Eaters episode. Like, look, like we're going to have way more of her. And then that episode came out, and it turned out the scene they showed last year was the bulk of her screen time for that episode. And then you flash forward to this episode, it looked like she's being set up to be an important part right next to Mbenga and Chapel, before once again having it walk back and then just disappearing. And with what we know about the final 2 episodes this season, I think it's safe to say the producers did not produce in regards to that statement last year. We're not going to get an Erica episode in the musical.
Ooh, that'd be fun.
Or in the finale, because it's going to be the Gorn.
Ugh, Lon.
It's going to be Lon. It's going to be Pike. It's going to be War. And maybe Ortegas will have a song in the musical about how, you know, she doesn't get to do anything.
How we need hashtag Mortegas.
Yeah. And then this was Jordan's con too, Pike. And I hate, it's ridiculous putting Pike in cons because he's incredible. He's a great character. Anson Mount is one of the best gets Trek has gotten. But he needs to get a better handle on his ship. Like you said, like at the meal, he's got to know. You don't have to invite all these war heroes. I get Mbenga because he's the chief medical officer. If you're going to have like a big senior staff meal with the ambassador, maybe Mbenga has to go, but Ortega's doesn't. Nurse Chapel doesn't need to be there. He's just not seeing this. I feel like his leadership has lessened of late to a point where I feel like he's almost a pushover. Anytime anyone recommends anything, he just says, okay. No pushback. And I know that's also a strength to a certain degree to hear everyone out. But at what point will he ever say, no, we're not doing it that way. Let's not do that. Like maybe Una was right in saying, hey, I figured out a way to shorten this visit. But I don't know if they should have. Should they shorten the ambassador's stay? I don't know. Pike didn't disagree. He's like, yeah, that makes sense. I was waiting for him to make a stance, say like, absolutely not. It's insulting to the ambassador. And if any crew member disagrees with that, they're welcome to confine themselves to quarters. Just make some kind of stance. Again, I don't know if I would agree with that choice, but right now it just seems like Pike's not making any decisions himself. He's just going along with whatever a person suggests, with like, Ahura being like, that place is evil, destroy it. And Pike's like, fire all phasers.
Do it.
And like, that's the right choice in that circumstance. But that's all season long. People are like, Captain, we have to do this. And he's like, okay. I would just like to see maybe an episode where he has to shut some shit down.
Or he gets 2 different opinions and has to choose one.
Yes.
Yeah. Mbenga agreed with shortening the ambassador's stay.
Oh, yeah. He took matters into his own hands with that.
I mean, I don't think even if he would have been
He
like,
cut him
no,
short.
we're not going to cut this short. Exactly. Benga would have been like, well, I'll nip this in the bud right now.
Yeah.
Did someone say cut? No, we yelled cut, Mbenga. No, don't cut.
Oh, no. We got to rewrite the script. I need to see. I haven't seen enough like tough Pike this season. One time we did see him tough was when he didn't know who he was and almost killed his yeoman.
Okay, I thought you were going to say something else.
What? Jordan, you need to start sharing with the class.
Well, he said the only time we did see him tough, I said when he was burned alive.
Oh, God.
He was a little tough. He needs to have tougher skin.
Oh, God.
And that probably happens because it's probably like a weekend and someone's like, hey, maybe you should go in that day. He's like, all right.
It's probably that weird girlfriend of his.
That's about
it.
Need
to replace those fire extinguishers? Okay.
You're right. It's a waste of time.
The expiration date? Nah, it's just capitalism. Just trying to get more money.
That's right.
And then lastly, Spock don't know hot from cold. Like, I get, like, we're trying to add some lightheartedness, and they don't know how to make a Roctagino. And they're not going to get, maybe they're not going to get the flavor right. He ain't even going to get the temperature right on this. Like, he should not be making drinks.
He got it.
It was scalding hot.
Okay, but, like, he cannot come onto another ship and then be the dude that sues McDonald's because he spilled hot coffee in his lap.
You know, this is the Klingon that would, though.
Oh, he absolutely would. But M'Benga made sure that he would not.
But Spock, I mean, you got to at least get the temperature right. Have you never made anything?
To be fair, he said we'll have plenty of time to work out the bugs, and then the guy walks in early because he wanted to take a tour. Because every ambassador that ever comes on board the Enterprise wants to take a tour. Who comes in after this long journey is like, hey, you know what I want to do instead of going to my room and taking a nap? Show me everything. Like, oh my gosh, dude. Seriously?
Oh, that does. Speaking of which, the opening scene with that other ship, the Kelsey or whatever, that was a cool looking ship. And I'm
the single nacelle.
I'm not a big single nacelle man. I gotta admit, I thought this was kind of a cool design.
I don't remember it, but I'll Google it.
I'll never forget it,
and then I'll have opinions.
Also, like in terms of canon, hold on. Looks like I'm being pulled over by the
Canon Police. I hate these men. They hate New Trek. They're bitching just to bitch. They're like a deranged. Tell you're right.
All right. So I don't want to. I don't get pulled over by the Canon Police here, but Klingons don't have tear ducts. Why is he crying? Not only does he have human teeth, he's got human tear ducts. Where do we draw the line? And if the flashbacks took place during the Klingon War, where's the Discovery uniforms?
Don't forget.
All right, that's what we thought about this week's episode. Let's hear from you guys.
Picking up communication, sir.
We'll start off with Ariel Nash. She says, the last 3 minutes of this episode gave me In the Pale Moonlight vibes. M'Benga was there. He had blood on his hands in more ways than one. He knew ideals did not save people in war from death. And he hated the monster war made him to become, something Sisko had to grapple with throughout Deep Space Nine. What he had done and the ideals he was representing as a Starfleet officer were in direct conflict with one another. In the end, the Klingon ambassador was a liar and coward without honor. Without honor. He could confidently order death on civilians, but ran when it was time to face the consequences of his cruelty. M'Benga finally made him face his actions. Whether it was right or wrong is entirely up for discussion. Diplomats and ambassadors wish for nothing more than to tie wars like this up in a neat bow when they are over. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work this way. In the wake of war, people are forced to sit with what they experienced and witnessed. The show did a phenomenal job making us sit in that uncomfortable and unresolved space with Pike. Just like in The Pale Moonlight, we are left empty, helpless, morally confused, but still hopeful that the characters we've grown to love will heal and find peace. Bravo, Strange New Worlds.
Ken Holzhauser says, much as I'd like to come in with my gentleman cartoonish shtick, this episode requires something a bit more sober. He missed out on commenting on last week's crossover, which that'd be the perfect episode for Ken Holzhauser. But it was so universally loved, what could I add? Oh, that quote is from Cary Grant. Hey, did you notice the actual solution to the problem was literally in the lower decks? I think we did, but I don't think we touched on it. So that's a good call. Under the Cloak of War was an entirely different experience. Those who know me know of my devotion to the classic series MASH. Much like Star Trek, it did a lot for shaping my morality and social conscience. While Star Trek has never traditionally been about war, this episode reminded me of Deep Space Nine and its exploration of PTSD and war. Seeing the Trek version of a mobile surgical hospital and the toll it takes on doctors was sobering. Although, yay, Clint Howard. The damage it did to the crew members of the Enterprise was heart-rending. The irony of the ending was that Dr. Mbenga gave the Klingons something he couldn't get anywhere else, an honorable death. Sandwiched between two novelty episodes, this one is harsh and brutal, and very human. My major gripe wasn't as much the lying to Captain Pike as how oddly manipulable the captain ultimately was. It took Una to point out the difficulties the crew members were having and talk him into a shortcut. His optimism, while generally a strength, blinded him to how difficult it is for some people to move on. Hawkeye Pierce pointed out, the war was worse than hell, because there was no innocent bystanders in hell, just sinners. Under the Cloak of War reminded us how correct that is.
Barbara Whipple says, this was well done and reminded me, like several others, of the DS9 war. The Klingon diplomat seemed off to me. Klingons are supposed to have more oomph. Perhaps considering the end of the episode, you could say he's just not your typical Klingon, like we had an atypical Orion last time. But Mbenga did not come clean with Captain Pike, so for me that was damaging to his character. However, I was glad to see Una functioning as first officer this episode and giving advice to the captain.
Chris Rowell says, complete 180 in tone from the last episode, huh? There have been many examples of war conflict through the various iterations of the Trek universe. Borg, Klingon, Romulan, Herosian, Dominion, Tribble. The Milky Way is indeed a dangerous place. The thing is, with all these examples, I definitely identify them as sci-fi. Lots of pew-pew laser beams, Ketracel white, fueled genetically engineered lizards, or assimilating cyborg fascists with poor cable management. Even the DS9 episode where Nog loses his leg in a siege with the Jem'Hadar, which was as dark as a war episode in Trek history, felt like sci-fi. This Strange New Worlds episode hit different. For me, a veteran of 3 tours in conflict areas, this was the first time in Trek history that an episode about conflict felt real. I read afterwards that Jess and Babs did extensive research, watching documentaries and talking with veterans with PTSD in order to really capture the nuances and emotions of war. They did such an amazing job. I could see myself and some of my former colleagues in their performance. Other than the one Black Ops Andorian dude, who should have definitely been introduced as Shran's grandson, it was a truly human experience of war in an FOB, with all the pain, uncertainty, anger, fear that I've only seen from shows like Band of Brothers. It was exquisite and moving. Huge kudos to the writers, director, and cast. 10 silent tears out of 10.
Well, Flora says, whoa, this is such a great look at war, veterans, corruption, definitely tops in terms of war stories. I really enjoyed how they weave the flashbacks in to give more weight to the present. I do have some cons, the main one being Mbenga's whisper talking. Thank goodness for subtitles. It wasn't enough to take me out of the episode, but after watching Michael Burnham do it for years, now it's hard to ignore. But overall, I think this is one of the best episodes of Trek ever made and deserves 10 Swolsef Mbengas?
Joseph Swolsev. Swolsev Mbengas.
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
Hell yeah.
And finally, Lainey says, well, I suppose Section 31 would need medical in their ranks. I imagine the Guardian will be displeased, but I like this hidden side of Mbenga and Chapel. 10 traces of Klingon DNA for me.
Lots of great comments this week, everyone. And we just read a few here. There are plenty more, but you guys just great comments this week. You can check out the rest on our council page, but we can't read them all because we have to make way for everyone's favorite Gatekeeper of Trek, the Gatekeeper of Forever. Great Keeper. What's your thoughts on What's your thoughts on this week?
What you think?
What you think about?
Forget the Butcher of Jagal. I'll tell you who the real butcher is. Whoever wrote this script. Now, I don't have a heart, but if I did, I would have needed someone to reach in and start manually pumping it because I nearly died of boredom. So much wasted time. This episode should have been 1 minute long. I would have killed that Klingon bastard as soon as he beamed aboard. Problem solved. And I'm confused. Is Pike the captain of the ship or the chef? I give this episode a 1. As in, I'd rather have my 1 gallbladder removed than watch this episode again. Okay, I've got to go. The trailer for next week's episode is playing, and hopefully it's better than... Oh, my God. It's a musical? Oh, for fuck's sake.
We're going to have to lock the doors for next week.
I
I don't think he's going to be happy. Maybe he likes musicals.
Maybe. Or maybe it'll be a 20-minute segment.
Gallbladder. That's where he lost me.
All right, let's go ahead and review this week's episode. Chelsea, what are you going to give Under the Cloak of War?
I think I'm going to give it 9 out of 10. But nobody mentioned that this is based off of like the Einstein quote, which is kind of cool.
Oh, I just assumed it was Shakespeare again.
No. So Albert Einstein said, "It is my conviction that killing under the cloak of war is nothing but an act of murder." And I think that's really telling of this episode.
That's brilliant.
So,
It is.
And cloak. Klingons have cloaking devices. It works on every facet.
correct. Yeah, 9 out of 10. Thanks.
Some people wear cloaks.
Whoa. There's a great Deep Space Nine episode.
A person new cloak. That's where I was going next. Never mentioned that episode again.
Jordan, what do you give it?
I give this one 8.5. So 8.5 bowls of jambalaya.
Very good. Very good. I give this one an 8. 8 Big Mbenga theories. Star Trek Wars Council give it an average score of an 8.7. All right, next time on's Chelsea, you said you had a next time on.
I do. It's poor.
Hey, well, join the club.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Ra agrees to like switch sides and start playing for the Federation because like they're like, we'll give you braces and we'll make you have like this beautiful smile. And he starts telling them some more secrets, but then he's like, well, hold up. Because one day he goes to the pool, right? And he like looks at his feet and he's like, these be nasty. So then he also requires like a monthly subscription for free pedicures and toe waxing.
Oh my God, you're right. He had perfect human feet, and
Yes.
we've seen Worf's feet.
Yes.
Is
That's
Worf
true.
just freaky like that?
I
Or
don't know, man. So
wow,
So save this action per season. Is it 3 or 4 Star Trek Wars, or just the foot season?
yeah, season 3, it's coming up. Thank you,
Sneak
Chelsea.
peek.
Jordan.
So the original draft, this episode was actually really different. If you all watch the Ready Room, they kind of talk about the Butcher of Jagal was actually just a butcher. Having heard of Captain Pike's prowess in the kitchen, a Klingon butcher who is stationed at Jagal comes aboard. He and Pike work in tandem as part of Starfleet's new cooking exchange program, and they serve up jambalaya with kind of a Klingon twist. It's jambalaya served with targ meat and fresh gach added to it. So they win by default because the Tellarite and Dorian team just argue for the entire hour about which dish they should cook.
Oh,
isn't that equivalent to cooking your dog?
yeah.
Kind of. I mean, there's wild targ.
Mm.
Like you have a pet pig, so like wild
Yeah.
boar.
Like it's okay to eat wild dogs, right?
I don't know of many
No.
other Klingon animals that have meat that you could eat. So I just, yeah. Honorable death.
Okay, so like dogs off the street, that's okay.
No.
Street meat.
Street meat,
No.
just as long as you don't know their name, I say.
No Kung Pao puppy.
I wrote David Lee Raw. I think I was letting go somewhere. Maybe he became with his teeth.
Targ meat?
He became a rock star. He got a Federation name. But yeah, in the musical episode next week, a bit of a spoiler, Mbenga sings an uncomfortable song about his time in the Klingon War, but it has light, upbeat music, but dark graphic lyrics, leaving the crew and audience unsure how to feel with a song titled Clinging to Life.
Oh, God. Can you understand it, though? I thought you were going to go to the Stargate SG-1 tie-in, because Ra is the sun god.
Oh.
And in Stargate, they actually, I know how big of a Stargate fan you are, but...
Not as big as a Babylon 5 fan, of course. And I was also waiting for when in the food scene, they're like, hey, this is Doc Ra. He's going to eat with us. And then old Babs was going to be like, what happened? We're not a small children to butcher?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
All right, let me tabble up the score. Okay. We ready? We all ready for this?
I think so.
How did Strange New Worlds do this week? Well, better than the Butcher. Using the combined average score of ourselves, you guys who voted at home, this week's episode has an average score of an 8.55. And that'll do it for this week. Star Trek Wars is available on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, and anywhere else fine podcasts are heard. If you want to support us in a non-financial way, the absolute best thing you can do is take a minute and leave an iTunes Apple Podcast review. That might not seem like much, but it is huge for the rhythms. Recent reviews are what help other like-minded Trekkies like you find us. So please write a review and we'll read it on air. You can also find us on Twitter at the Star Trek Wars. Jordan, always a pleasure. Where can they find you?
You can find me on the Facebook Council page and, of course, on Broadway for Star Trek Wars, the musical.
Oh, my God. Are we going to sing the entirety of the next week's podcast? All of our pros and
I think for the fans' sake, we absolutely should not.
Okay. That's a no from Jordan, but we could still veto him.
I'm kind of for it.
Well, that's a plot twist.
Why?
Thank you, Chelsea.
Yeah.
We are singing everything we say next week, and it won't be obnoxious immediately. Chelsea, as always, thanks for doing this with me. Where can they find you?
Star Trek Council page. Pretty much it.
All right. As for me, well, when I'm not talking Trek, you can find myself and my son Connor discussing all the Bond films at the Bonding Together podcast, now available on Apple Podcast and Spotify. And that is it for this week. But Star Trek Wars will return next week to discuss the penultimate episode of the second season titled Subspace Rhapsody. Those old scientists in the Cloak of War into the musical? Is Trek going for the trifecta, giving us a Barben Harby?
Ew. No.
Barben Harby, let's go party. Because it's awful. It's horrible. Come on, Anar, let's go party.
Oh my God.
All right.
Barb and Anar?
Ew. Anar Barbie.
All right, well, let me get this. We're over an hour this week. Holy cow.
I know. This is longer than I was expecting.
But a welcome one.
Thanks for listening to Star Trek Wars.